Hey guys, what's up? It's Zyflin here, and today we're going to be taking a look at Lavos, the latest Warframe to be added into the game with the Orphix Venom update or event or whatever you want to call it. Quick apology for not uploading a lot. There just hasn't really been a lot going on with Warframe, and I don't want to make a new beginner guide just quite yet, because next year I'm going to be making one big long beginner guide video after TennoCon comes out, because that way, you know, we've got like up-to-date beginner guide that you can just refer people back to, and hopefully it will help people out. I'll have timestamps and stuff like that, so hopefully you guys are looking forward to that. But here is Lavos. He's the latest frame. He is very unique because we have the ability to add elemental combinations to all of our abilities, and we don't actually need energy here. All of the abilities work off of a cooldown, so very unique frame. There are a few changes that I would like to see whenever it comes to this guy, but we'll talk a little bit more about that whenever we get around to it. Let's first go ahead and talk about the abilities that he has, right? So we have his one, which is just a basic damage deal, right? It's kind of like two whips or two snakes come out of his hands, and it just applies toxin damage to the enemy that you end up hitting with it. So let's just go ahead and spawn in some heavy gutters here. We use our one, we whip them, deal damage to them. Pretty nice. Toxin proc as well. Cool beans. Nothing else to that. We have the two, which is kind of like a slash dash or a rhino charge, except we drop vials of cool damage behind us, right? So we press R2, we do a big old dash, and all these vials are sort of let out, and they leave this trap on the ground. Enemies will get damaged by this whenever they stand in it, which is really nice. The other thing you can do with this ability is you can tap it twice, and then just let all those vials out where you stand. I was a little bit late with a tap there, but there you go. That's a little bit better. So you can just let them out, and it kind of makes like a horseshoe on the ground or a U, so it's a little bit difficult to target and to get the enemies caught up in it that you want to get caught up in it. But I would recommend putting that on like a I don't know, a doorway or something, so the enemies just sort of like filter through it and get the cold proc applied to them and the damage taken whenever they're standing in it or going through it. So that's cool. We've got the third ability. The third ability is quite unique because it does a lot with energy orbs, health orbs, and ammo pickups. It basically makes it so health orbs and energy orbs are one of the same, and then ammo pickups will work on any weapon that you have. So it's cool, but it's also a damage deal at the same time. It deals electric, and then will, of course, apply any other status effect that you've got built up with Lavos' unique ability here in the bottom right hand side of the screen. All of the abilities do that, by the way. So if I were to make, let's say, corrosive damage by holding down my 1 and holding down my 3, my 1 would then do corrosive damage, right? But as you can see, whenever I use my 1, the corrosive damage is now gone, and I have to go ahead and build up the corrosive damage again by holding down 1 and 3 again. My 2 is now going to deal corrosive damage plus cold, which is really nice. Hold down my 1, my 3 does corrosive damage and electric. So it's pretty cool. There's never really a reason for you to only use one single element, right? Like, you want to be making elemental combinations to make the most out of Lavos. So just using whatever the enemies are weak to. So if you're playing against Corpus, go with Magnetic. If you're playing against the Heavy Gunners here, you can build into corrosive. Maybe you want to use viral sometimes. It's entirely down to you and the enemies that you're going against and the build that you're running. And yeah, let's talk about the 4 now. The 4 is kind of like a shitty miasma from Saren. It deals heat primarily, but of course you can put the corrosive on it. So we build up our corrosive, we use our 4, and it's gonna spread out, right? And it deals damage to enemies, and it's all right. It's okay. Lavos really shines whenever you're using all of his abilities in conjunction with one another. What makes it gimmicky is the fact that you have to put the elemental combo onto the elements every single time, right? So what I would recommend DE do as a change is if they were to make it so, let's say I want to make, I don't know, viral, right? So to make viral, you need cooled plus toxin. So if I were to go ahead and hold down my 2, the first element that I add would be cooled. And then if I hold down my 1, I have my toxin. What they should do is they should make it every single ability cast from this point on is viral, and the viral doesn't go away. And then if I hold down my 3, it would replace the first element. So in this case, the electric would replace the cooled, and now my updated elemental combination would be corrosive, right? And it just stays there instead of disappearing. Because what I noticed as I was leveling this guy was that the elemental combination, like just making the elements for my abilities, that was taking a big backseat. And it's like how you get the most out of the frame. So if you're not using these elemental combinations, you're severely lacking in damage, and you're just making the frame less effective, right? So you always want to have the appropriate elemental combination built up in this little UI element in the bottom right here, or is passive, whatever it is. So you know what we let me just go ahead and get rid of that. The conclusion that I came to is that there's two different ways to build them. You can build them for damage, right? So that would be a standard build looking a little bit like this. This is the build that I'm running because I just like seeing enemies die whenever I use my abilities. Or you can build them kind of like a primer, right? So you can go ahead and just go max duration and max range and just use his abilities solely for applying status effects to a ton of different enemies, right? Because you have Condition Overload. Condition Overload is an insane mod. The more status effects you can get on enemies, the more damage the more damage you're dealing with melee, right? On top of that, Power Duration actually affects the status duration of the status afflictions you apply with Lavos, right? So having max duration on here is going to make the status duration go all the way up, which is insane. So your build would look a little bit like this, and then you can throw on something like Augur Reach or something in this spot right here, or a defensive mod. It's entirely down to you, or you can swap Streamline out, throw in a defensive mod, throw on Augur Reach. Totally down to you. So this would be sort of like your primer build right here, and then if you wanted to go for damage dealing, this would be the build that I would recommend running, right? So the combo that we're running whenever it comes to dealing damage with Lavos, let me just go ahead and get rid of all these guys and spawn them in again. Heavy. There we go. The combo that we're doing is something a little bit like 1, 2, 4 free. And the reason that we use our free as our last ability is simply because the free makes it so the cooldowns on the abilities get lowered the more enemies it affects. And it's a little bit clunky, because with the way that's set up right now, every single sort of combination you tried to do with Lavos, or every single ability rotation, the free is always going to be the last one you use. So what I would also recommend is that every single ability is going to give you a different amount of cooldown on other abilities whenever you hit enemies with them, right? And this makes building power duration or power efficiency, just a little bit more worth it, because it's going to be affecting all of the abilities across the board, like it should anyway in most cases. I've seen a few people say that, you know, Lavos would be a much more fun frame if he just had the energy. And I believe by, you know, just make it so every single ability will cool down other abilities quicker, that'll sort of alleviate that feeling of, hey, it would just be better if we used energy here, right? If you get what I mean. It would be a little bit OP with the 4, but maybe make the base cooldown reduction on the 4 a lot lower compared to the 1, the 2, and the 3. Because, I don't know, they should scale it appropriately, make it so that, you know, the 1 gives you a lot because it's a very small cone you can hit enemies in. The 2 gives you just a little bit less. The 3 stays where it is, and then the 4 will give you the least amount of cooldown reduction per enemy hit, if that makes sense. So, you know, that's what I think they should do, just to make the frame a little bit more fun. But let's get down to business. I'll show you guys what I mean, right? So we make our corrosive, right? So we have to hold down our 1 under free every single time we want to do this, by the way. Don't forget that. And then we'll use let's use our 2 first, right? So we double tap our 2, make our corrosive again, use our 1, make our corrosive again, use our 4, and then make our corrosive again. We have to wait for the duration of the 4 to go away. And now we use our free, affecting as many enemies as possible. And now we have our 4 back again, even though it has a 30-second cooldown. Because we affected so many enemies with our free, then we've got it back pretty much in no time. We have to wait for the cooldown of the free again before we can sort of do that combo, right? Because it doesn't matter how many enemies you hit with the free, the cooldown of the free always stays the same. And I would like to see that change. So, like, by the time my free is over, my 1, my 2, and my 4 are back up. So then I could use my 1, my 2, and my 4 to sort of cool down the free and keep this loop going, you know? So let's take a look at the damage that I've dealt to these guys. This is, of course, corrosive on every single ability that I used. The guys that are closer and the guys that are, like, directly in front of me or caught in the blast of the 2, they're going to have lower health than the other guys. But you see, we take away about 50% of their health with that that combination there working as an AoE. The other thing that I really dislike about this frame, and I wish they changed this, is the 4 doesn't damage enemies if they are below or above it, right? So it sort of like shoots like gas, right? And you would expect the gas to sort of like fall down and affect the enemies, but it doesn't do that, you know? So I would like to see it sort of like trickle down and affect the enemies that way. It would be cool. It would be nice. Maybe make it so like if you're really concerned with balance, even though I don't know why you should be because Saren exists, you can make it so that the gas that trickles down deals less damage. You know, it's still going to apply the status effects, but it deals less damage compared to actually being in the radius of these little, I guess it's snakes that he throws out. But, you know, this is the frame. He's all right. He's like, if you've got the time to play the new event to farm him, by all means go for it. But you're not really missing out on anything if you don't pick him up, that type of thing. So he's just okay. You basically have to go through this ability rotation twice to kill enemies, and that just isn't worth it whenever Saren exists. You know, if you build this guy to be a damage dealer, if you're building him to just apply status effects, that changes the conversation because you can apply a ton of status effects very, very, very easily. But I still think this guy would be a lot more fun if he was a damage dealer because, like, there's so many different things in the game that you can use to just apply statuses, right? You know, you have Saren, like I keep on saying, you've got the nuke core, you've got stuff like that, and, you know, using an entire frame just for applying status effects seems a little bit over the top, you know? So, yeah, let's just go through this rotation again. So we use the 1, build our corrosive, double tap the 2, build our corrosive, use our 4, build our corrosive, wait for the 4's duration to go away, and then we use our 3, affecting as many enemies as possible. Build our corrosive again. So double tap our 2, build our corrosive again, use our 1, build our corrosive again, use our 4, build our corrosive, double tap the 2, why not? And then we have our 3 back up, affect as many enemies as possible. So, like, the more enemies you kill, the less effective the kit sort of gets because, you know, you're unable to affect a ton of enemies with your 3 to get that cooldown reduction on your 4, if that makes sense. But all the enemies will be dead by then anyway. So, he's very clunky, and he's just overly complicated for no reason. They should just make it so every single ability, if you hit an enemy, will give you cooldown reduction on all the other abilities, right? So if I hit an enemy with my 1, my 2, my 3, and my 4 will have the cooldown reduced. If I hit an enemy with my 2, the 1, the 3, and the 4 is going to have the cooldown reduced. Or they can even go the extra step and just make it so you get cooldown on all the abilities across the board, you know? So, I don't know. That is sort of my take on Lavos. Like, he's not terrible, but he's not great. He's all right, I guess. And if you've got the time, by all means, just go for it. But he's just really hard to recommend whenever Saren exists. You know, Saren does not everything that he does, but she puts in work, you know. Saren is just like, hey, I use my 3, I use my 1. I need to get energy. Should have got that. I use my my 3, I use my 1, I kill bad guy, I press 4, bad guys start to die very, very fast, right? The damage just keeps on going up and up and up and up, and the more you spam your 4, of course, the more enemies will start to die around you. Saren is pretty insane. He's just a nuts frame. So, but yeah, Lavos, pretty okay. You get him from the new event. His weapon is also alright as well, but I'm not going to make an entire video talking about the weapon on its own. I feel like making sort of like a rant video soon, talking about the amount of weapons in Warframe, because we've got to the point where I honestly cannot keep up with the amount of weapons that are in the game. And on top of that, adding more weapons seems kind of pointless because there's not really, you know, content to go and do with them, if that makes sense. So, yeah, we're going to make a video talking about that there sooner or later. But, yeah, that's Lavos. Numeric rating, I want to give this guy maybe like, I want to say a 5 out of 10. Like, the foundation is there. They just need to tweak some numbers and add some quality of life, and then he's going to be a much better frame. And just bring him more in line with Saren. Don't be afraid of how strong Saren is, right? The developers always tout how this game is a power fantasy. Just embrace that fact. Make this guy nuts. Make him, like, really usable. Quality of life. Tackle that first, and then go for the damage numbers and bump those up, and then talk about, you know, the cooldown and stuff like that, and see how you can find a good balance around cool. I make it so that, like, whenever I use the final ability in my rotation, the first ability is ready to go. Kind of already is like that, but, you know, they could do it better. I think they can do it better. I think they can make Lavos even more fun than he is right now. So he's all right. Thank you guys for watching this video. I'm going to stop rambling now. Like the video if you liked it. Subscribe for more Warframe content, and I will see you guys in the next one.